Kia ora ana.
Morena. O kia orana.
Ai, kia ora ana.
Hey, hello.
Kia ora ana.
Kia orana.
Okay, love it.
Kia ora ana.
Oh, kia ora ana, Janine, you're always so supportive of
I can't stay too long, but I thought I'd just come in. I've been over the Cook Islands a few times and I love it there. So, yeah, it's just amazing.
yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
there's some familiar faces.
Good to see you, Mr. Wynne. Good to see you.
Hey, good
And
to
you'll
see
probably
you too,
see.
Ralph. Gosh.
Yeah, and Jeff's hanging around here somewhere, so no doubt you'll see his ugly mug.
Good to see the proliferation of Mount Albert Grammar old boys everywhere. Hey,
Of course, dusk on the walls, my brother. Dusk on the walls.
good
You're
to see
looking well,
you.
my man.
Yeah, feeling good. Hey,
Yeah.
health is wealth.
Ioi. Ioi.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? Here he is. Speaking of the devil. Here he
I'll
is.
speak of the fallen angel himself.
See you guys, man.
She's got the recording there.
Oh,
So yeah, it's cool.
yeah. So, team, so we're just gonna wait for everyone to jump on. Whoever's here to join, man. It's also going to be recorded, so this is going to be an awesome resource for Pacifica. So we're really privileged to have Thomas here. Thomas, if you want to, feel free to set up and get your things ready, and we'll get started at 10 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think all I have to do is hit the share button, eh? No, really?
Yeah. Kia ora, Moana. Where from? Where? What service centre are you from?
Tokoroa.
Kia ora ana, I'm from Tokoroa.
Oh, wow, whoa, kia ora.
Kia ora ana.
So someone obviously from Manukau district has shared, so if you want to pop out to my law for sharing that with Sokoro Star.
Muff, where are you working at the moment? You're in Auckland.
Yeah. So I'm the regional support advisor Pacific, so the northern region.
Come.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. Not wrong.
All I say, mate, cream always rises to the top, okay?
Yeah, who would have thought, my brother? Who would have thought?
Well, you know who would have thought that? Some of our teachers.
True that.
Yep.
Oh, no, that's
Yeah.
true.
Some of our
You're not
teachers.
wrong.
Yeah. Good men that shaped my life.
Hey, Moana, is Rita Tui joining us by any chance?
She's too busy at the moment, but she does. She seems to love me.
Just
I don't know.
clip her ears, mate. Clip her ears. Jeepers. Represent Pacifica and Tokoroa, please.
Oh yes, I'll tell her.
Yeah, we've got a
And
few
hopefully
Tigers
that'll
down
give
there.
her more onus to come and join in. Me taki.
Ai, me taki.
Yeah, team, we've got 5-10 minutes to spare. We'll kick off at 10. We'll get started. So get yourself a cup of tea, make yourself comfortable. Yeah.
When I share the screen, I won't be able to see you guys anymore, eh? No.
At least you got two monitors, mate?
No, not where I am. No, it's okay. I don't need to see you guys. You guys will be a distraction. You're too handsome.
Just have max space.
I mean,
Print it on your bed.
I don't want to see the tears rolling down your eyes as your heart is broken and you feel convicted, the Lord. Eh? Okay, going to be good today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome to have Janine here. She's one of our lead service managers from PAMU.
Thank you, Helen.
The staff are logged in anytime.
Whereabouts are you, Jeff? Are you in Auckland too?
Yeah, we're in Auckland. Boston Road, across the road from Mount Eden.
Yep, okay. I was going to make a funny joke about Brian Tamaki, but I won't do that.
With tattooed eyebrows.
And he's got the best eyebrows I've ever seen.
Oh.
I was thinking about getting mine shaped, but my wife will divorce me. My wife will divorce me, and I'll have to hand in my Mags for Life badge.
You lose that badge as well, buddy.
Oh,
But it's
we don't accept these sometimes. Oh, is this not a badge reunion? You guys got bags.
Anyway.
That was the Hillary College of back in the day. Huh?
Back in our day, yeah,
Hillary College. I think they've changed their name. They use the full name now, which is nice actually. Say Edmund Hillary College.
Oh, see, Hillary, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, you must be so busy, Thomas, and making time available for us.
Think that it's always busy. That seems to be constant, but this was really important. Just very fortunate there was like a 40-minute window in my day today. It's going to be very busy this afternoon, but sometimes the Red Sea parts and we can just walk through, and it's just amazing. Hey. And other times it doesn't happen. Yeah, but it's been good. I actually was at the Cook Island Consulate meeting. We had a get together last night in Wellington. And having a very similar discussion with Ministry for Pacific People on Friday. So, it's nice to be able to, dispel some of the myths about the Cook Islands and Cook Islanders, because I think there's some views out there that maybe aren't well, for those of us that live there, it's quite a different experience.
Aye. Thank you, Tom, making yourself available and sharing that cultural knowledge.
Yeah,
It's all about learning, and I appreciate everyone also taking the time to actually join us, and also for our Auckland District, Hale and his team, Team Jeff out there in Auckland District, just to provide a platform, an opportunity for us to, improve an opportunity for learning and build on a cultural cap capability and capacity as such. So, yeah, me taki.
Me taki.
Yeah, because the cookies are a hard bunch to deal with, mate. We're all thinking it. A lot of angry men out there, brother. A lot of angry
You know
men
what?
out there.
You're absolutely right there, Muff.
Mm,
I absolutely agree with you. Yep,
mm,
that's very, very true.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
It's-
in my
it's-
experience, it's patience and the ability to listen
Yeah,
and go past the noise.
yes,
Ah,
correct. Yeah,
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 no, so when you're working with men on
Yeah.
the cookies,
yeah, yeah.
just
Very much
listen
so.
for the gems. Yeah,
Yeah.
me taki.
Well, traditionally, culturally, we've always had safe spaces for men to talk.
Mm.
We just don't have those in this new context, and we've struggled to build those sort of safe spaces again for each other.
Mm.
Outside of faith-based organizations,
Aye.
yeah, what men do, they find toxic places to meet and talk instead, but then the conversation is quite toxic as well, and
Aye.
it just becomes echo chambers for toxic behavior.
I agree.
Mm.
I agree.
We could have a whole session on that one.
Ioi. I think if you can book it in, mate. If you can book it in, there'll be a lot of interested people here that
Yeah.
would like to join in that talanoa,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
kōrero.
Yeah, because that's probably where I've done most of my work as a counsellor, working in that area more than anywhere.
So you're the resource we've been looking for.
Well, you know what? I'm more than happy to lean in and provide some insight there, because of course I've done work here and in the Cooks and come back again, and I'm still counselling every Sunday professionally. It's still something that I do. So, but that topic is probably the one closest to my heart. That one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We'll make it happen, Tom.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, then Holly will send me an email and I'll connect with you, and then we'll just try and see how we can make that happen. I'll get the right people around us,
Yeah.
those
that'd be
especially
good.
working in the treatment space.
Yeah.
In the front line
From one
staff.
angry man to another. But at least when we were angry, we had our helmets on and we were playing on the field. Hey, that's a bit different.
Indeed. Yeah.
That's what you call socialized violence. That's what that is.
Relive those moments, eh? Relive those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, team. It's 10 o'clock. We're gonna kick off. We're gonna start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kia ora to our team, beautiful Pasifika team, and all the staff that have made their time available to join us today. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge our Heavenly Father is here, and bringing these kind of spaces and opportunities for us to meet up and talk, speak, and dialogue about culture, about who we are as a people, who Cook Islanders are as a people. This is important. My culture is important to me, and I'm sure respect is the way of Pasifika, and I'm sure Cook Island's culture is everything to them. So I acknowledge Thomas Tarurungo Wynne, advisor for William, someone of that status to make his time available for us. Man, that's gold. We appreciate it. It's thank you. Not enough words to say thank you, but thank you for making your time available to come and present with us, share about the Cook Island culture, also how it cross sects with the high incarceration rates and things like that, and identity is a big thing that Thomas will talk about. And I'm really interested, man. Really interested about that. And we're willing and ready to learn. So first way I can hand it over. I see Moana from Tokoroa has made herself available. If you want to open us up, please, in any way you feel you want to do so, and then we'll get started. Yeah. Me taki.
Me taki. Ka puri tātou ki te atua. E te toa mana, te toa te ki te aroa e takinga me taki, te ia mātou tō o witi i te oranga atu tā mātou akamitaki anga ki a koe i te ia rā. Tauturu mai i a mātou, i roto i tō mātou anganga, tauturu i tō tātou taiake o Thomas, i te rā ki aka kite atu ki a tātou kātoto e a tā au i inangaro no tātou kātoto. E te atua e aroa mai i a mātou. Tamariki ara te tangata nei, ki a ora mātou i a koe. Āmeni.
Amen.
Amen. Meitaki, awesome. Thank you for that, Moana. Much appreciated. So, team, I just ask please if Thomas will present, if you can please mute your, I'll push your mute button so we can hear this crystal clear. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Thomas Wynne to introduce himself and start his presentation.
Okay. Thank you, brother. Kia ora tātou katoa. Lovely to have share this space with you guys and hopefully provide some tools and reflection and some critical thinking around this topic today, which is something very close to my heart and my sister's heart, of course, which is ourselves, Cook Islands people. Just a little bit about myself. I currently work in Wellington, but I've spent probably 25 years of my life working as a youth worker, social worker, counsellor in schools in Auckland, working at Mount Roskill Grammar and Mount Talbot Grammar. And then I moved to the Cook Islands and I was working as a counsellor there in the high school there for 7 years. And then I moved to Aitutaki and I was a year there working in the high school there. I'm a very proud Cook Islander. I spent 12 years in the Cook Islands and have moved back to New Zealand 3 years ago. I'll be here on loan for a little bit longer, but my plan is to move back home and that's where I want to contribute next. That's my goal. I was born in Ponsonby. One of that first generation Pacific people that were born out of the migration, that first migration in the 1950s. My parents migrated to Ponsonby. My mum migrated from the Pacific Islands, the Cook Islands, from Rarotonga, and my father from the North Atlantic island of Ireland. And so I always say my parents are both islanders. One's North Atlantic, the other one's Pacific. And I've got 2 brothers and a sister from that marriage, from that relationship. And I've got 3 sisters from another. I've got 5 children myself. I've got a 40-year-old son who keeps calling me bro. And I've got a 27-year-old daughter. She's the youngest. I've got 8 grandchildren, which is why I hide in Wellington, because they're all up in Auckland. And that way I can see them and then give them back and then go back to work. But today I wanted to just give you maybe a bit of an overview of the Cook Islands. I've got a presentation. I'm going to try and share it now, and then I'll just speak for maybe the next half an hour to 20 minutes. Hold on a second. Let's see, make sure this works. Is that working? No.
Hi, sorry. I was just listening to the Cook Island presentation. It's all good.
Yes. Okay. I just need to share my document. Hold on. Can you see it now?
Team, can we see it?
No.
No.
Okay. Let me try something else. Hold on. This worked yesterday. Oh. I can see it sharing from my end.
Okay, what we'll do, I'll probably, yeah. So we'll share it from our side.
Please, yeah, please. Okay. Technology is great when it works.
Team, just a 2-minute break and then we'll
Okay.
recommit.
See that.
Maybe we can hear a song from you.
Oi.
While we're waiting, kia ora, Thomas.
Oh, kia ora.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Hey.
I'm hiding at corrections.
No, I do remember you told me you were moving there. How wonderful.
So I was really pleased to be, I'm so stoked that you're able to talk to us this morning, knowing how valuable your time is. So it's really nice that you're with us.
Well, they are very fortunate to have you. And your skills and your heart. It's wonderful. Good to see you.
You too.
Okay.
I'll leave my camera off like the rest of them.
Okay. Let's see. There you go. That looks good.
Just let us know when you need to change out, Thomas, and
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So let's jump in there, right? So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the Cook Islands. Just jump to the next slide. So the Cook Islands are 15 islands in the South Pacific, with 13 of those islands inhabited. 2 are marine sanctuaries, and the rest have populations from 2 people to 10,000 people. So on the island of Suaro, 2 people live there for 6 months, and then they go up by boat, pick them up by boat, and bring them back to Raro for the cyclone season. I've actually sailed there. It takes about 4 days to sail there and about 5 or 6 days to sail back. The resident population of Cook Islanders here in the last census was 80,000. So we're currently the second largest Pacific group in New Zealand, though the Tongans would say that there's more of them, but I think we're pretty close, Tongans and Cook Islanders. And you know, when I tell people that Cook Islanders are like the second largest Pacific group, they're often surprised because they're not as visible, I guess. But the current resident population in the Cook Islands, as of about 2 months ago, is 14,500. So our population is very small back in the Cooks. Most of our people are here, and then we've got about 30,000 people living in Australia as well. So that our population is about 120,000 here, not living in the Cooks. Out of that, I think the significant number out of that number is 80% of our people were born here. 80% of our population have probably never even seen the Cook Islands, have maybe only ever visited it for a holiday, gone back for Christmas. And for the most part, even though they tick the box and identify as Cook Islanders, their experience around what it means to be a Cook Islander is often very limited, and for a number of reasons. I think of all the Pacific countries that arrived in New Zealand in the 1950s, and for reasons that I don't yet understand, Cook Islanders really pushed the idea of assimilation and of blending in and being a part of the makeup of things more than the others. And for that reason, our language is suffering, and we only have a very small, I think it's 18% that can actually hold a conversation in Cook Island Māori, and our language is now are identified as under risk by UNESCO. For the most part, our face-to-face or our engagement with our Cook Island culture will be around dance or song or food, celebrations around Christmas, haircutting ceremonies, weddings, funerals, birthdays. But outside of that, I'd say that that's probably the limit of the experience for people that call themselves Cook Islanders. The next slide. So this is the Cook Islands. You'll see there's a northern and a southern group. When people say the Cook Islands, often they think that there's just Rarotonga, and they think that we're all Rarotongans, but actually we're not. And the northern group speak a dialect quite different to the southern group. In fact, the northern group still use, some of them still use the WH, they still say whenua, they spell it that way. The northern group of Puka Puka, they use S's and L's, very similar to Tokelau and Samoa, their language. Inua Manu, where my family's from, our language is probably closer to Tahitian. So or our dialect is probably closer to Tahitian. So when you say the Cook Islands, what you need to be clear when you're speaking to a Cook Islander, which island that they're actually from, because it's almost offensive to call somebody a Rarotongan when they're from Aitutaki, or an Achuan, or from Puka Puka, or Nassau, or Suaro, or Manihiki, or Rakahanga, or Penryn. So what I'd say to people is, think of the Cook Islands as 15 confederated states that were brought together by the New Zealand government in 1901. And just on that, Cook Islands is not our name. That is not a name we choose. That is not a name that we were given the choice of. It is not a name that the people chose. It's a name that the New Zealand colonial government decided in 1901 when they passed an act extending their boundaries that included this group of 15 islands that they then decided to call the Cook Islands. So unlike Samoa and Niue, Tonga, Hawaii, Tahiti, all of them retain a traditional name for themselves. For us as a group, one, we've never had a traditional name because we've never been a traditional group of 15 islands. We really were an experiment of the New Zealand government linking us all together. And in fact, when the Cook Islands first became the Cook Islands, it was only 3 or 4 that were included plus Niue. So when the New Zealand government formed the Cook Islands, Niue was a part of us. Then Niue came back after that and said, actually, we are not Cook Islanders, we are Niueans. And then their journey was their own. Yep. Just the next slide. Just some numbers I pulled out of the census. Just go back the next one with the numbers. There we go. Just some numbers for you, just to sort of get a snapshot of Cook Islanders and where we're at. So the median age for Cook Islanders is around 21. We've got a very, very young population. 17% of our Cook Island population are under the age of 20. 28% of our community have no qualifications, no formal qualifications at all, have left school with nothing. 18% can speak 2 languages, Cook Island Māori and English, but that means that there's 82% of our population that when it comes to speaking Māori or speaking Cook Island Māori, they're unable to have that conversation. Okay. We'll just go back to that. Go back. How we doing, guys? I can speak to it. It's all right.
Speak up, isn't it?
Here we go. Perfect. I think one of the big figures for us that separates us from many of the other Pacific groups is only 37% of our population in the last census said they had a religious affiliation. So, you know, if we look at Pacific communities, faith-based organizations have really been the holders and the keepers of language and culture sitting within those faith-based organizations. But for the Cook Islanders, you know, more than half have no faith-based affiliation whatsoever. And, you know, apart from the faith value base that we get out of those sort of communities, this has really, I think, aided and abetted our loss of language and our loss of culture. That has definitely been a contributing factor. 2/3 of our population live in Auckland, and 83.1%, like I said before, were born in New Zealand. And the median income for a Cook Islander in New Zealand is 22.5 thousand a year, which is incredibly low. But when you take in factors like our population is very young, they leave without generally a formal qualification, they're generally have no faith-based support. They were born in Auckland. The fact that 22.5 thousand is the Pacific median income for us is telling, especially when we're thinking about offending and the reasons why people offend, and why the access to goods and services outside of the normal realm of how we attain goods and services may be more appealing when your income and your qualifications and your disconnection and the environment that you're born into is one that I'm talking about at the moment. Next slide. So if we look at housing, employment, education, the ongoing effect of poor housing conditions and overcrowding remains problematic for Cook Island people, with these housing conditions feeding into social issues around health, social well-being, education and employment. Literacy, or the lack of literacy, and early exit from the school system are factors that also feed into the Cook Islands offender, but none more, in my view, than the issue of identity and a loss of culture and connection. Identity and the disconnection from culture remains the biggest challenge for Cook Islanders Māori born in New Zealand, with 80% born in New Zealand and most of them not speaking Cook Islanders Māori. This vacuum of culture, my position is this vacuum of culture feeds into the vacuum of identity, and the identity vacuum is often self-medicated. And this is often the trajectory into drugs, drug use, drug abuse, and drug culture. I can't overestimate, where I think that this is an issue so deep for us as Cook Islands people. Especially, I remember for myself just being surrounded by Samoan friends that had a strong sense of culture and a strong sense of connection to their language and their identity. And the thing is, when you're surrounded by people that have what you don't have, it just accentuates what you don't have. And I always felt that for myself, I always felt that emptiness around ideas of culture and identity, which was very much why I went home in the end, because I knew there was only one place that was going to fill that cup for me, and why I intend to go back, because I like my cup being nice and full. And there's only one place for me, there's a source to make that happen. But that doesn't mean it can't happen here. But I think when we think about the Cook Island offender, if we have these sorts of ideas for us around what it means for that offender potentially to be a Cook Islander, then we may understand some of the behaviours and some of the decisions that have flowed on from that person in the trajectory of their life as a Cook Islander, identifying as a Cook Islander, and then of course turning up in your service as an offender that's a Cook Islander. When you go to we jump in the next one. I often think this one because it's something that we say a lot, and we always talk about, and you hear it every time at graduations and when people succeed. But our grandparents and our parents migrated here so that we could have a better quality of life. That's the mantra. That's what we say. That's what we say about our parents, when we think about our grandparents, when we think about their sacrifices. And yet I ask myself, for us as Cook Islanders, or even as Pacific people, from 1952 to 2022, have we asked ourselves the question, have we achieved what our grandparents and parents sacrificed everything for? Have we actually achieved a quality of life that they dreamed of? As they're moving from the security and safety of their home to an industrial 1950s New Zealand, and now we have the children and the children's children of those migrant parents, have we as Pacific people attained those aspirations? And do we live that thriving, abundant life that they dreamed of? Because if we haven't, then we need to ask ourselves some serious questions as to why that hasn't happened. I think about my grandparents that moved here, and now that I've lived at home, I know what they left. And now you know, I wish my grandmother was still alive, I'd ask her that question. But she'd be 103 today if she was alive. You know, Grandma, was it all worth it when you look at where we are as a people and where we are as my children and my grandchildren and the life that they live? Or should you have stayed? And we just would have just built our lives there, because I've lived back in the Cook Islands, and I can tell you, for me, for those that stayed, I think their life is better. I actually think that they were able to achieve more and grow more. And for all the deficit that we felt we had in 1952, I can't help but think that if we would have stayed home and just built our economies there, that our lives would have been quite different. And our language would have been in a much healthier state. Our culture wouldn't have been commodified as it has become to tourism. And I think as a people that we would have had resilience factors that would have enabled us to better travel and maybe migrate, but with those things intact as opposed to letting them go. And I think to myself, of course, you know, was prison their dream for us? Of course it wasn't. And, you know, to see our sons and daughters in prison, that was not part of the dream. But unfortunately, you know, we see more of our young men and our young women entering into, you know, being incarcerated. I've had family members incarcerated, very close to me, incarcerated, that have done time not only in Australia, but also here. I've had very close friends of mine incarcerated. You know, I was visiting family in prison last year, and I sat there. I remember visiting family in prison last year at Spring Hill and looking around the room and just looking at the potential that was sitting in that room. And I was sitting there asking the question, not only of my family member that was sitting there, but of all the sons that were sitting in that room. Why are you here? You know, what were the circumstances that brought about for you to be sitting in this place as opposed to being out there thriving, which was the aspiration that brought our people here in the first place? And I guess it's a question, you know, that we all ask, whether we're working outside of prisons, whether we're working in government, whether we're working for the correction service or anything attached to that, or faith-based organizations, or those in the health industry, or those of us that are working in care. How did our sons and daughters end up there? Because the fact remains that, and I said this to my family member that went into jail, when you went there, we went there also. When you go to jail, we go with you, because your name is my name, because you are a part of me. And where you go, I go, because we always celebrate the success. You know, when Mate Tonga wins, the whole Tongan kingdom, the whole Tongan community celebrates. But the same can be said for when there's failure. And the same can be said for when our sons and daughters end up in jail, that their failure becomes ours. And that's the onerous responsibility of all of us that are Pacific, is that succeed or fail, they are still ours. They still belong to us. We don't let them go. I always say this to, you know, sometimes I say, you know, that guy's an idiot. So yeah, he is an idiot, but he's our idiot. You know, he belongs to us. And sometimes we laugh about that as a family. But the question remains, you know, why are they there? And then the next question, of course, for those of you that work in corrections is, why do they keep coming back? Because it's one thing to be an offender and to find yourself in jail. But when we have recidivism, then there's a larger problem. And I think there's a larger systemic problem that we have to deal with. So my position is clear, that disconnection for us as Cook Islands Māori and as Pacific is the single most destructive factor that all other negative factors flow in and out from. Disconnection from family, disconnection from culture, disconnection from our faith, and disconnection from our identity. When we disconnect, for us as Pacific people, it is traumatic. It reaches into a part of us that is so painful that the only remedy for that is to either take that pain out on others and to inflict that pain on other people, or to self-medicate it, or to do both. And we see with offending those that find themselves in corrections and those that are in the system, you know, they're either doing one of two things. They're either self-medicating with drug use or drug abuse, and then there's the onflowing effects of that, or they are taking their personal pain out on somebody else, and that is a whole other story, or it's a combination of both. And if we think about self-medication, and if we think about inflicting your own pain on others, then that's just disastrous. It just destroys not only the person, but it destroys every single person that they're in contact with. And you know, we try and make sense of it, but you, of course, you know, as corrections, you have to deal with these people every day, and which is why I think, you know, your role as Pacific people in the correction service is absolutely critical, and why we need more Pacific people in there. But I think that there also needs to be some understanding as to what our role is actually in that space. And I just want to talk about that just a little bit further. Next one over. Just as I said, the pain of disconnection is often met with a high of self-medication. And when I say the high, it's the high that a person can lift themselves out of their pain and be somewhere else. I mean, we use the term out of it because that's exactly what it is. I'm out of the pain that I'm in. And when you think about it, of course, it makes sense that someone would want to remedy the pain that they're in, and they take themselves out of that pain by, you know, using something that will make them feel better, by taking something or using something. But we know that they've just created two problems, because one, they haven't dealt with the pain of that situation. They haven't dealt with it, the issue itself. And two, they've now created an addiction, possibly. And so, and then with the addiction comes the dependence, and with the dependence comes the people that supply these things, and with the supply becomes that whole system of things that then our people get caught up in, and they then find themselves in prison, and they find themselves, you know, addicted or involved in organizations that are unhealthy, that feed into that same toxicity. Next one. But you know what, the good news is, because I'm definitely a strengths-based person, connection is our strongest resilience factor also. So, you know, I think if we reframe some of the reasons as to why our young men and women find themselves in prison, and think more around these ideas of culture and identity, and drug abuse being the medication of that pain, then we also know that we know how to provide the kinds of things that will build inside them. And culture and identity are readily available to us. It's the kind of thing that if we think along those lines as an answer, then we know who it is we need to talk to, what sort of people we need to bring in to speak to our young men and our young women that have these sort of cultural capital, cultural intelligence strengths to feed into that empty cup of theirs. I've got a picture there of the waka, and this is where the oi or the rara meets the waka itself. And as you can see, it's lashed together. And, you know, one thing that people don't realize about our traditional voyaging canoes or wakas is that they were lashed. There was no nails. There was no nails used to put those things together. And even the modern ones that I've had the privilege of sailing on, they're lashed together. There are no nails in those things other than the nails that go in the running boards on top. The whole thing is lashed together with kiato running across it and the two hulls running that way. The reason we lash things and not nailed them is because the lashing provides flexibility and movement. And that movement and flexibility was really, really important on the water when we sailed, because of course, unlike a highway, the water moves and is volatile and can be calm one day and can be very, very violent the next. And I wanted to add that to the mix of our thinking around culture and identity, because it's vibrant and it's not something that's static. And if we look at our offenders, very often they've brought into their lives to fill that cup a whole new culture and a whole new identity to fill that empty void. And often that's based around gang culture, and sometimes it's African American youth culture. And with culture and identity comes language. And as we see with our young people, their language has changed. You know, the way they talk has changed. The way they think has changed. And that's because they've adapted a new culture. And so my thinking is, you know, we need to confront that culture that doesn't belong to them. It's actually not who they are. And really think about helping them to better understand who they are. Because when you have connection, culture, and identity, and you know who you are, I'm adamant that you'll never find yourself in jail. You'll never be a person sitting behind bars, and you'll never find yourself, you know, at the services of the correction services, because identity is absolutely important for who we are as a people. Next slide. So here's my question to you, as I was thinking about this. Who then is capable of guiding them to connection again? That's to you all. And you know, when in schools we use this a Latin term, it's locus parentis, and it literally legally means when that kid leaves school and comes to school, they're in my care and my responsibility. And when they leave school and find their way home, they're then in the responsibility of the parents. Now, for whatever reason they find themselves in jail, the fact remains that for those of us at Pacific that are working in that space, they are now yours. They are now in your care. And, you know, there is a, you know, for us as Pacific, you know, we don't see other Pacific people as just other people or strangers. We do make connection with them because they are ours. My question to you is, what then do we do with them while they're in that space? Because there are two very different ways that you can deal with these situations. And, you know, I've had friends and family work in the correction service, and some of them have had some very interesting ways as to how they saw their role as correction officers, and we probably disagreed in the way they saw their role. And I think it's probably critically important, you know, if we want to see these young men and women not return to prison again, that the role of the correction officer is absolutely integral, because you are the face-to-face, day-to-day person that they see and interact with and deal with, and you have the opportunity to speak to them where we can't. For those of us that are outside the prison walls, the families and friends that come in on a Sunday, you know, to sit for an hour or two with our family members, we get that very, very small space to connect with them again. But the people that actually have the onerous responsibility to connect with our sons and our daughters are yourselves. And I think it's critically important that we get that right, or they end up back there again. And, you know, when we think of the sacrifice of our grandparents and our parents, you know, we don't want that pathway for our children or our brothers or our sisters. And, you know, I don't know why people join the correction service. I mean, there's probably a plethora of reasons, but the fact remains that you're there. And for us as families, I can say for me, as a family member of someone that was incarcerated, you know, it was really important to me that I felt that the people that were seeing my family member each and every day were able to build him in ways that I couldn't, because I couldn't be there anymore. Now, here's an interesting story, just as an aside. I had a family member that was locked up in Sydney, and I went to visit them in Sydney. And as I was walking out of the visiting room, I heard this guy yell out to me, and it was a guy I went to school with, and he was working there as a prison officer. And he just said to me, "Hey, Tom, you know, nice to see you." And he said, "Who did you come to see?" And I told him who I'd come to see. And he said, "Hey, you know what? I'll just keep an eye on him for you. You know, that'd be good." And you know what? That just really settled my heart, knowing that I had to hop on a plane and come back to New Zealand, just to know that, you know, a very good friend of mine, you know, a Pacific guy, was there in Australia, and that he would at least have line of sight of my family member that was there. So, you know, from a personal perspective, you know, it was critically important. And I'd like to think that, you know, for you as prison officers, you know, you too see that as as a part of your role. And yes, you know what? It's not in your job description. That wasn't part of the interview process, I'm sure. But as Pacific people, this is the responsibility we take on because they are our sons and they are our daughters. Okay, next one. I tried to use this, what kind of graphic can I use? And that was the best one I could come up with. So, you know what? Let me just say this to you. I hate the term screw. I absolutely hate it. And we should never, I think, let that term be applied to ourselves because that's not who we are in any space or in any situation. And other people may refer to us, corrections officers as that, but I've never used that term and I've never been in prison, of course. But actually, I did get locked up once, but that's another story. I was a teenager. But look, I think that we need to push back on these sorts of terms and terminologies and these sorts of ideas, and be sure that as a service that we are not buying into that sort of deficit view of who we are and the role that we play in the prison service and with our young men and our young women, and that actually we can flip the script and that we can use our cultural capital and our intelligence to connect and build, or we can just, apply that broken colonial lens which suppresses people and beats them down and reinforces their disconnection and their trauma, only to guarantee that they'll be back again. And again, the choice is always ours. Who will I be turning up to work today? Will I be the best that I can be? Will I bring all that I bring? Can I bring my cultural capital and my cultural intelligence to work? Absolutely, I can bring that because these are the things that makes me different. I am not just a corrections person. I'm not just a person working for the corrections service. I am a Pacific person working here, and I'm here, and I bring my cultural capital with me, and I bring my cultural intelligence and my ability to connect and my ability to build and my ability to say no to those broken colonial ways. I don't need to behave that way. I don't need to treat other people that way. And I can actually show people that probably need it more than we realize that there is another way to live your life, and that I can be better than what I was yesterday, better than the way that I came in, and that, I guess I can reflect what I'm hoping that they will look to become so that they don't return here ever again. I mean, look, people turn up to prison for a whole bunch of reasons. Sometimes it's just dumb decisions, sometimes it's bad company, sometimes it's dumb decisions, bad company, terrible circumstances, all of those things. For whatever reason, they make their way in there. For whatever reason they arrive, we don't have any choice over what happens, how they got there. What we do have a choice of always is what we do with them while they're there. And I think that is critically important. And I firmly believe that for our corrections officers that are Pacific, that your approach, that what you bring to work every day, that your ways in dealing with our sons and daughters is different, because we are different, because we see the world differently, because we see them differently, because we understand the power of connection, because we understand the power of cultural capital and cultural intelligence, because we understand the power of our faith, of our values, and of the things that make us resilient and strong, and that help us to identify who we are, so that we can stand and so that we can make healthy decisions. I think that's really important. So as you're having your cup of tea on your way to work, think about those things because, in my mind, if you're dealing with people and you're interfacing with people, it's never a job. I'm not at a job. I've never gone to work thinking I'm going to a job. It's a vocation. It's something that we feel called to. And, correction service, regardless as to what other people think about it, I'd like to think that you have a sense that you are called to this job because you're there not just to do a job and get paid and go home again, but you're there to make a difference with people that absolutely need guidance more than anybody else. And the best thing is you've got a captive audience. That's the best part. They're actually not even going to go anywhere. You've actually got them each and every day, and you actually know how long they're going to be there for. So you are in a prime position to be a person of influence in those situations. Or you can choose not to be. And like I said, use that colonial lens on our sons and daughters and apply that instead, only to guarantee that for the most part, they'll be back again. And that's what we don't want. So the last one. Look, as I said before, when they go to jail, we all go in there with them. Our dreams are jailed along with theirs. And, you know, my plea, my hope and just us having this time together and sharing space together is that that's all of us that have had family members in there, we need your help. We need you to help our Pacific sons and daughters to see who they are again and to help them reconnect. And if we can just do that, then I think we have a greater chance of, one, their time in prison being meaningful, and for the most part, that when they finish their time inside, that we never, ever, ever see them again, and that they leave prison with a sense that there's another path for them, and that they can make other decisions, and that they can fill their cup in other ways, and that they can never return to that place again. Now, I just wanted to finish with just a quick story, and I mean quick. And this is me personally talking to you about my own personal situation. So my brother was incarcerated, and he was the one at Spring Hill, and he spent 4 years in Spring Hill. And I've talked to him about this already, so he was happy with me sharing that. He did the Māori course while he was in there, and I saw him change his life because of that course. Because what it did was, it was the first time that he'd ever been confronted with the question around who he was. And he's a Kokala Māori, but he took aspects of that Māori unit and the Māori learning around identity, and he applied it to himself. And for the first time in his life, he stepped out of that place where he was, and he started asking questions around who he was, who he was connected to. He would write to me and ask me for our equivalent of a pepeha, and who are our great-grandparents, where is our marae, where's our maunga? And you know, I had never had that guy ask me those questions ever. And for him to ask those questions said to me and my mum and my family, as much as it was hard to see him going into prison, what he was confronted with while he was in there changed his life. And when we went down to Spring Hill to pick him up when he left, and he's been out now for 2.5 years, here's what he said to me as he came out with his little bag of goodies and his grey tracksuit and whatever else he had on. He looked at me and he said to me, "I'm never going back in there again." And that's the decision he stuck to. And we as a family have supported him in that. And that happened because of what happened while he was in prison. And that happened because of the program that you were running in there. And that happened because of the correction officers that were there that spoke to him about these sorts of things. And this is why I say, you know, I don't speak to this just as an idea. I speak to this because I know I've seen it work, and I've seen it happen. And I've also seen it not happen. And I've also seen people go back in again. So, look, I want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity just to share space with you. By no means am I an expert in these things, but I am an expert of my own experience and the things that I've seen. And I just value the time. And look, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. And if there's a conversation that needs to happen after this, absolutely, let's just make time and talk more. So I'll give it back to the chair. The floor is yours.
Meitaki Thomas Wynne, my law lover. Thank you for that. That was awesome. That was really insightful. And we're really receptive. Really hit home on why we're here for Pacifica, the space. But I think right now we're gonna, like as you said, it's a time at the end for questions and answers. So team, I'll put it out there. Thank you for joining us. If you got any questions Thomas. Now's our time. Even if we go over time, I think it's well worth it. While we've got the advisor here with us, Thomas, let those questions fly. We're about to put the next PIP program in Auckland District on steroids. Because, yeah, all right. We want to really hit these guys deep with what the identity is about, who you are. Who are you? You know, I've never met anyone who doesn't feel good about themselves, who doesn't know who they are. This guy feels too good. But back to you, team. If you've got a question, go ahead. Yes, yeah, we've got a question there, all the way from, yeah, feel free to share.
Me taki atapaka, Thomas. Thank you very much for sharing, especially your own personal stories. I think it's such a privilege to hear that lived experience voice. So really thank you to you and your whānau for allowing them to share this with us. Look, I know that most of my colleagues on here are from the community. I think I've seen that we've got a prison director on here, Michael Rongo, from Manawatu. So that's awesome that he's here, because often our corrections officers are on the floor and don't have the privilege that sometimes we have for this. So it'd be great if this recording was available for them to, you know, to view at some point. I think it's got very strong messaging that I think is beneficial. But look, so my question, Thomas, and you know, we've worked together for some years in the Cooks, but my question is, given that, you know, the faith-based way forward isn't really there for you know, for our young people from the Cooks, or even our older people from the Cooks, what would be your suggestion as community practitioners of how we actually help build those connections within the community, if we don't already know what they are, or we can't seem to find them like naturally in some of the faith-based organizations? What kind of advice would you have for us?
Yeah, I think in my current role, you know, you've definitely been able to identify there are key people in our community that are providing some of that identity role provision for our community, and they're generally not faith-based. They're generally just working in education and outside. But you know, that's a great question, because this leans into that. You know, if you want to ask the people, ask the people. If you want the answer, ask the people in their community. And I really think that you know, it's a matter of gathering some of our key community people together and asking them who are those people in your community, because they're there. I mean, I could run off half a dozen names of people that I think that I could point in that direction that could provide this sort of input. But to be, and I guess if we cast the net further, and it all depends on budget. I mean, there are some key people in the Cook Islands, and Rarotonga especially, that would be able to provide that sort of cultural insight at a depth and a granulation that probably you can't get here. And look, for the price of an airfare and getting people here, you know, we can get the sorts of taonga people here that are built around our kōrero and our Peo Māori that would be able to provide that sort of deeper insight. And, you know, when you, like I said, when you meet people that have that depth, you know they do, because you realize your own shallowness. You know, it sort of becomes really apparent. So those people are there in our community, without a doubt. It's just about asking the right questions and steering it, you know, in the right direction. And I'd be more than happy to help with that. But I could point you to other people that could help with that also. So yeah.
Me taki.
Me taki.
Well, kia ora everyone. I'm going to chime in before anyone else jumps in here. Junior MacArthur, practice leader down in Hawke's Bay.
Junior MacArthur, come on.
Kia ora, Mr. Wynne. Your face looks so familiar. I can't.
Come on.
I think that you can help me with placing you, but yeah, no, thank you for sharing, Matua. Thank you very much for sharing it. It really hits home. You know, you're weaving in all the holistic and the therapeutic and the, you know, lived experiences. All of that stuff is really beautiful to hear. You you know, someone of your caliber and, you know, education and, you know, all of that to be able to share from your heart. Thank you very much. It's a question. It might be a question. It might be more of a statement, but just, I really think, you know, the Hokairangi model, I think, you know, it sets a real nice model for us Pacifica to follow up on and to really, as a goal for us, because I think there's a lot of research gaps. I think there's a lot of information gap. I think there's a lot of practice gaps in our Pacifica space. And what you've been talking about today really, it really provides a lot of energy in our Pacifica networks, why we exist, why it's important for us to hold this space in all our different districts. I mean, it's easy in Auckland, Wellington, and the main areas because there's plenty of us there to really, you know, be prominent in leadership and all of that stuff. And there's more room to grow in that space too. But in the districts, there's Pacifica communities all up and down the motu, and with less resources, with less programs, with less counsellors, with, you know, that really can help speak to that sense of loss of identity. And our practitioners, you know, regardless of culture, they really need the upskilling too. Well, my personal thing is I'm sick of upskilling my, you know, practitioners about Pacifica when we're all part of this. It's not just our sons. They're part of this small family of 5 million that we really, you know, it's something that we can do. And so I think Māori is overrepresented in our system. So is Pacifica. We're the next on that tier. So really important to have a strategy, really important to be purposeful about our interactions and to upskill. All the reasons why Hokairangi exists, I believe it's really important to have something for us to exist as well. And the momentum is building. Thank you to Robert Powell. Shout out to, you know, all of our leaders across the motu is really holding the space and creating this momentum. Because like I said, there's a lot of gaps. And I think as it rises, you know, everything that you talked about, the reason why it resonates with us, it will become part of our practice and part of our goals. We need the goals but we need a plan. You know, we need a plan, and for us to then interpret it in our own districts, and some of the good things that I've noticed coming from Auckland and being in the smaller districts, that even though we lack sort of government resources or specific institutionalized support like the agencies, we lean on each other as Pacifica practitioners. That network is still there underneath, you know, all the other government agencies and the NGOs and all that there, you know, just like we do. We just make it happen. We see the need and we address it. And whether we do that officially or as Pacifica practitioners that are connecting, you know, I connect with Wynne's and we're you know, social development, Ministry of Education, all of us, we see the need and we want to help our people. So thank you for just adding to the momentum of this corridor. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you. You're looking really good.
Nice to teach, and just on that, Junior, you know, I think again, you know, we you know, we can make a lot with a little. You know, when there's 8 of you sitting around the kitchen table and there's a loaf of bread, you know that we're going to have to make that last for today and tomorrow. You know, we are resourceful. You know, we can make best of the resources that we're given. I mean, I think. Sometimes, you know, yes, I wish we had more, but it's, you know, there's a hunger and a creativity and an initiative that's born out of our lack of resource that makes us even more resourceful. And sometimes I think if we had everything that we asked for, that we wouldn't be able to function at the level that we do. But there is a sense that with most things that we're sort of building as we go, you know, so, you know, sailing the waka as we go. And as we sail the waka, you know, we're sort of putting things on board and that's okay. You know, that's not a bad situation to be in, because there are critical things that we learn as we're doing that enables us to not only reach the waypoint we're heading towards, but the waypoint from there and onwards. And that's how our people conquered the Pacific, but with that sort of attitude. And I think that if we drop down into that cultural capital and draw up that sort of indigenous knowledge that we have sitting within our DNA, then these things become straightforward for us. You know, we operate at this level anyway. But we don't always articulate it because it's just what we know, and it's just because it's what we know, it's what we know. But actually, if we take a step back and we reflect on that, actually, there's a whole lot of stuff sitting in there. And, you know, I know for myself, I think when I've been sailing on a waka for 4 days, we're about 900 miles out from Rara, and we're sitting on the deck one day, and I remember just sitting there thinking to myself, wow, our tupuna are amazing. The fact that they were able to do this on huge wakas with people on board and pigs and chickens and food and water and everything else, and go from island to island to island to island and conquer an area larger than Russia. Yeah, I come from pretty good stock. You know, there's not much that I can't handle, and any problem that comes my way, I'm okay. I'm okay. You know, because I come from a people that more than survive, we're thriving. Look at us, we're still here. You know, we're still punching, we're still doing well. And you know what? I remember the captain saying to me one day, if you fall in the water, I just want you to know it's going to take 45 minutes to find you again. Now, that wasn't the kind of thing I wanted to hear. But you know what? Sometimes our sons and daughters fall in the water. And sometimes we have to circle back to get them. And sometimes that takes time. And sometimes they drown. And we can't save them. But, you know, there are those that we can save. And we just have to ensure that when we need to circle around, that we know how to tack and change and maneuver those sails so that we get there quicker, and so that we can pick them up and get them back on board and get them back, you know, in the direction that they need to be in. And, you know, the waka as a metaphor is so critical for us as Pacific people. And I think, you know, my time in Raro sailing on the waka has really embedded itself in the way I think about a lot of things. So hopefully that's helpful, you know, to you. And like I said, you know, if you want to talk about this more, we can talk about this more. But love you to see you, Junior. Love you to see you, brother. Hey.
Whakatai mole tala noa, and appreciate your comments and your wisdom in the space that you've been operating, Tom, for a very long time. Vital in the sense that reconnecting with your homeland. You've grown so much, and your ability to articulate and share your concerns. But I would also like to take a moment to thank those of influence that are here, our leadership amongst the Arapautama that are here, listening to the kōrero, because while our frontline staff are operating in that space, they too need that support in the sense of this is the direction they're taking. It may not quite fit, and yet our leadership are now listening into why into taking that direction. And what they need is that support, the support to carry on and work with our tane, wahine, and tamaiti, the rangatahi for the people that we care for in our oversight. So I still remember a few of us here, Bay Roscoe, the field, helmets and pads, and you run through the play, you reassess, and you go at it again. For those on the front line, handi. And I think that's what it is. In whatever direction we take, reassess. And I love the fact that the lashing, the flexibility when it comes to knowing that it is in a volatile space, that the ability to maneuver in those times. So love the metaphors, love the kōrero, and appreciate your time, Tom. And I appreciate everyone here listening in. Looking forward to our leadership sending this video, this kōrero to others who have missed out on the opportunity to be here live, so they may listen in and assist with their decision making in the sense of supporting our frontline staff, Pacifica, non-Pacifica, who are here to serve. Because our main function is to minimize the offending rate.
Yes, absolutely.
To minimize the offending rate. Me taki.
Me taki mata.
Hey,
It was like lunchtime. Yes.
Yeah, time for lunch, Tom.
See you down the
just
tuck
wanted to
shop.
say, look, it's home, brother. It's really good, man. You know, just want to, one of the things my mum said to me one day, and talking along similar lines to what you're saying today, and man, honestly, the korore was awesome. She turned around and said to me, she goes, you know what the problem with our people is? And now, as you know, with Fijians, you know, she said, we've lost our edge. And I said, lost our edge? She said, yeah, we've lost our edge, son. Come over to New Zealand, like, they're part of the 60s migration. And it was all about, you know, the fact being that once upon a time, they had the guts to turn around and just do things, right? We're just going to go ahead and do it. But we become too comfortable. And when you become too comfortable, you assimilate too much, and everything starts to look vanilla instead of you representing who you are. And we sort of, you know, so the thing is that what you're saying today just resonated a lot with me, bro. So I'd like to really thank you for your time.
No, I appreciate being here. Okay.
Is it, the floor still open? Team, we still can make time, 5-10 minutes available. If you've got anyone's got any burning questions for the advisor, Thomas, Wynne, feel free to share.
Kia ora from the 16th star.
Oi,
of the
Cook Roa.
Islands. Kia ora
Here we
ana.
go. Here we go. Here we go.
I actually, I like our Fijian brother over there really resonated with me in terms of the loss of our language due to assimilation. And the reason why that, because our current theme for this year is tui tui yo ki te one one o toku uitupuna. So in terms of the solution being connection, and to tui tui, our people, to the soul of our tupuna, this whole presentation makes sense. And so to you, Thomas, I just wanted to say thank you. One of the things I struggle with all the time is people refer to us, and even amongst our Pacific brothers and sisters, is, oh, lalokonga, you are lalokonga. Ka ore, I am aizutakian. And so people ask me all the time and say, why do you get mad at that? Why do you get mad at it? And the reason is because it's like calling all Samoans Apians.
Yes.
And so the thing is that we are different today. You know, to reminded us that there are 15 islands, 2 of them are, and there's an identity for every single island. There's a dialect for every single one. Every island gives you your uniqueness, and to be able to use that in this space and use it as a way to influence, and then to influence our practice. I'm encouraged by your arara today. So thank you for sharing, and I hope that we continue to work the Pacific Network space, so that more of us become. I've only been in corrections for like 3 years, but to hear this autara today has been really just reinforces how important we are, and to continue to use our own knowledge, our cultural knowledge, in our own practice. And so grateful. So I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for confirming the things that we're here to serve. We're also here to influence using everything that's unique to us.
Absolutely.
So me takia te pā. Thank you, everybody. Whoops.
Kia ora tātou katoa. It's Michael Warongo here, Prison Director, Manawatu Prison. Kia ora Thomas, kia ora Thomas. I wasn't going to say anything, but I had that burning sensation to jump in. Rob knows what I'm like, to share a few thoughts. And I don't really have a question, but more a challenge. And the challenge is, I guess, to our Araputama family is around 2 things. One was Rob and I, Rob Pottle, who's on here as well, and Matt, we've had discussions in the past around why can our Pacific sisters and brothers not see themselves in influential leadership positions? Why did Michael Rongo have to be the first Pacific Island prison director in Arapotama? Those sorts of things, you know, and so I just wanted to put out a challenge, a widow out there around, you know, be that, you know, your potential, you know, grow your potential. I would love to see more of us Pacific people in really high level leadership positions. We come with a lot of knowledge. We've already seen it across all the talanoa, all the kōrero that has been shared today. And I feel like if we can be authentic and we can share our kōrero in our specific space. But I would challenge us to think bigger so we can really influence change across the network. Yep, I can create change. I can create intentional space for practice and what have you within my prison. But I can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. And I think collectively we can create awesome change. But that's my little 2 cents worth. And I just wanted to share, you know, being authentic, your most authentic self. You know, 3 words stand out to me as a Cook Islander from Mangaia: big, bold, and colourful, you know. And big is not my size or the size of my plate. It's my personality. You know, my boldness is about how far can I go to push things or push people. So that's my little 2 cents worth. I really appreciate your sharing your thoughts with us, Thomas. They really resonated with me. I didn't know I was a Cook Islander until I was 14 years old. You know, geez, that's crazy, right? And you know, as I go back home yearly, apart from COVID, I miss home, and I love my people there. So I just want to leave those thoughts with you. We need to see more change leaders of the Pacific people in Arapotama. That's me. Kia ora. Kia ora.
Hey, me taki ngao, Michael, can I just say something to that, just in reply? You know, there is nothing small about us. You know, we were never born for smallness. I really absolutely believe that. And like I said, when you see what our people have done in times past, we should never be categorized or identified or understand each other from our engagement with as migrants here. You know, our history goes back thousands of years before that, and what we were able to achieve there has stood the test of time. And you know, I always say to people, we are the original entrepreneurs. We are the risk takers. There is no way that you can step out of your taro patch, get on the beach, hop on a waka and sail for 1,000 miles without having courage, the ability to take risks, and to imagine things that haven't even been seen yet. There's no way. So when you're on the ocean, the horizon is 70 nautical miles in front of you all the time. You can't see any further than 70 nautical miles in front of you. That tells me that you have to dream about what's beyond that 70 nautical miles. That ability lives within us. So absolutely, brother, I absolutely agree. We should be stepping into leadership roles because that's who we are. And we should be working together and creating momentum and encouraging each other and providing spaces and providing ladders for others to come up, because that's who we are. That's how we operate. If we are going to operate in our cultural, authentic selves, then that's what we do. Absolutely agree. Smallness is not for us. That's not us, by no means.
Unless the advisor has got anything else, in case we don't want to hold up the advisor. I know you got a busy day. You let us know when that time's up.
Yeah, I need to go.
Okay. Okay, team. I think we'll park it there. But you know, we got an awesome link here with Thomas Wynne, the Sungai Thomas Wynne, the advisor. We are so grateful, so privileged to have had you share your presentation with us and all the different leaders that we've heard of today, from Junior down in Napier, Ma'alolava, Rob in Wellington, and also the district manager, the prison director down in who just spoke, man. So awesome leadership there. Thank you, mate. Thank you for your presentation. And we're going to make use of it, and we want to keep the dialogue going and turn it into actions and results for our people that we work with. Yeah, because man, the message was awesome. I want to leave the final words with you, Thomas, if you have any final words and thoughts for us. And then we'll get our sister, Rona from Tokoroa, to close us off. And that will be us, team. It's been great. It's been awesome.
No, I just want to say thank you, really, just thank you for the time. I really appreciate the opportunity to share space with you all, to share ideas and to encourage you all. Let's move forward. Let's keep airikumua. Let's keep going. Our sons and daughters and families are depending on it. So, hei taki mata.
Me, thank you, Ngā. To everybody who's inside this chat today, may God bless you all in every single space where you're at. May God bless you. Ka pure tātou ki tētua. Tētua e aroa mai a mātou. Tamari ki ara te tangata nei. Ki a ora mātou i a koe. Amen. God bless you all. Ka kite. Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Oh, Shankles.
How are you? Oh, we'll get you
Good.
a Kahoot
How are
ready.
you? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it's
edit
good.
it.
Oh, yeah. I saw the same questions. Yeah.
We're still recording.
Oh, we'll talk to you after. Okay. Yeah.
We're still recording. Okay.
Thank you, Ale. I'll download.
Thank you, Leah.
Cheers.
Thanks, Leah. Let's hang up.